Now, after David defeated Goliath, King Saul moved David into the king's castle with him. There, God made it so that King Saul's son Jonathan became best friends with David. Because God was with David, he was successful at every task that King Saul asked him to do. That's kind of the same thing like Joseph. Remember Joseph? God was with him, and even though he's a slave and a prisoner, he was successful at everything he did. So people noticed he rose up really quickly to run everything, eventually ran the whole country. Well, it happens with David too. God was with him. King Saul noticed he was successful at everything he did, and he eventually made David a commander in his army. Because God was with David, again, David's not special by himself. He's special because God is with him. Because God is with David, the Israelites won every battle that David was a part of. One day after David won a battle, the women of Israel were singing in the streets, and this is what they sang. Saul has struck down his thousands, and David his 10,000s. That's in 1 Samuel 18, verse 7. That meant that the people believed that David was a greater warrior than King Saul. This made King Saul envious of David from that day on. The next day, King Saul was tormented by a spirit sent by God. Remember, God had rejected King Saul over Israel because he disobeyed God several times in the past. Now, while King Saul was irritated, on 2 occasions, he picked up a spear and threw it at David with intentions to kill him with it. Each time, David ducked out of the way. King Saul repeatedly tried to kill David because he was envious of him. King Saul's son Jonathan was David's best friend. Whenever Jonathan heard that his father was going to try and kill King David, or he wasn't King David yet, he's just David, sorry. Whenever Jonathan heard that his father was going to try and kill David, he would warn David so he could escape. That's 1 Samuel chapters 18 to 20. Now, eventually, Saul just decided, I'm not messing around. I'm going to kill him. I'm going to put him out because he's envious of him. Saul knew that David was going to take his place. He just knew it as king. So David was on the run now from King Saul, who clearly intended to kill David. And he made it public, I'm going to kill David. One day, David entered a town called Nob and met with a priest named Ahimelech. He asked the priest for food for he and his men and a sword for himself. The head priest gave David these things because he knew David was a good man. He did not know that King Saul was trying to kill David. When King Saul heard that the priest helped David, he summoned Ahimelech the priest to see him, and 85 other priests from the town of Nob went with him to meet King Saul. I guess they thought this was going to be a good thing. Saul asked Ahimelech the priest why he helped David when David was an enemy of his. Ahimelech said he didn't know that David was an enemy of King Saul. He believed that David was a loyal servant of King Saul. In a fit of evil rage, King Saul had Ahimelech and the other 85 priests put to death right there. Then King Saul sent his soldiers into Nob, the city of the priests, and they killed everyone and everything that was alive in the town. King Saul is becoming extremely evil. He was trying to hold on to his power as king, even though God rejected him as being king. He was now killing everyone that he felt got in his way. And you can read that in 1 Samuel chapters 21 and 22. Now, on 2 occasions, David snuck up secretly on King Saul when Saul was out looking for David to kill him. David could have easily killed King Saul each of these times. But each time, however, David let King Saul go. He said that it was God that anointed Saul as king, and David should never lay a hand on someone that God anointed. David believed that when God decided it was time for Saul to stop being king, God would get rid of Saul himself. David made King Saul twice aware that he snuck up on him and he could have killed him, but he had no bad intentions against King Saul. King Saul twice thanked David for sparing his life, and he said he would no longer come after David. But however, his promises to leave David alone and not try to kill him never lasted long. He was overcome quickly by his envy of David each time, and shortly he would return to look for him to try to kill him, because he knew deep down that God was going to replace him with David as king. You can read that 1 Samuel chapters 24 and 26. Now, around the same time the prophet Samuel died, the Israelites were presently fighting with the Philistines. King Saul tried to ask God what he should do in these battles with the Philistines. God would not answer or respond to King Saul because God rejected Saul as king for his evil and rebellious and wicked ways. Therefore, King Saul went to a fortune teller or a medium. He told her to contact the spirit of the prophet Samuel who died and ask Samuel's spirit what to do in battle. God says in the Bible many times we should never go to fortune tellers or mediums. Know that in your own life. God says we're not supposed to go to fortune tellers, mediums, psychics, any of those people. It's in the Bible many, many times. The medium did, in fact, contact the spirit of Samuel. And Samuel was mad at King Saul for doing this. Spirit of Samuel told King Saul that because he kept rebelling against God to serve his own selfish, evil purposes, the kingdom will be torn out of his hands and given to David. God then told King Saul that he would die tomorrow in a battle with the Philistines. And that's exactly what happened. The next day, King Saul and his forces were in a battle with the Philistines. King Saul was killed along with his son Jonathan, who is David's best friend. That's in 1 Samuel chapters 28 and 31. All right, next week we're going to learn more about how now David will become king to replace Saul. See you next week. Hi, everyone. I hope teaching the Bible has been beneficial in your journey to learn the Bible. If you'd like to contact me, or if you'd just like to learn more about me, there's two places that you could find me. The first is at Facebook Michael Koch business page. And if you go there, you can see a complete history of my Bible teaching activities. The second is my website, and it's all one word, teachingthebible.net. Until we meet again, I love you, God loves you, and always follow Jesus. Bye-bye, everybody.